Welcome to Brainpower Factory. My name is Luke, and today we're going to talk about Egyptian mythology. This is the lesson from this week, lesson 2.1, and we have 4 lessons in Egyptian mythology. What we're going to do today, the introduction, the presentation, which is about the Pharaohs, and an actual task that I will explain after the video. So there's not that much. What do we need today, during this lesson? During the lesson, use your ears and your brain. You're going to think a lot about it. And for the extra task, you need a story that we'll provide in the link in the description, and a pen. That's all. Not a lot of work. So, Egypt. Where is Egypt? Well, it's slightly bigger than the country from last week, from Greece. Egypt is here. It's northern Africa, and it's, as you see, it's a very weird shape. But a lot of countries in Africa are this shape. And it's been along for a long time, already 3,000 years ago. Like the same time as the ancient Greece. So, for now, let's go for a story. See you there. Hi. So, I'm going to tell you a story about the daily life of a pharaoh. If you don't know exactly what a pharaoh is, I will explain it later. So don't worry about it. Just, it's an important person who rules over Egypt. So, in the morning, the sun rises on yet another bright day in ancient Egypt. Egypt is very warm. As you know, it's in the north of Africa, so there's a lot of desert. A man wakes up. But this isn't any ordinary man. This is the pharaoh. This is the last time he will be alone for hours. He has many officials, servants and slaves to make sure he is always safe and perfectly presented. His day begins with cleaning and dressing by servants, including the splendidly named Chief of Scented Oils and Pastes for rubbing His Majesty's body. That's the title of one of his servants. It's pretty impressive to have the title, I think. When he is clean, he is dressed and adorned with a huge amount of jewelry. After all, he's the pharaoh. He owns vast amounts of gold and he needs to look the part. He needs to look perfect, of course. The pharaoh then walks to the audience chamber to hold his daily meetings. As guests enter the room, they present themselves in front of him. He is a divine majesty. They are mere mortals. As usual, there are ambassadors who are offering tributes from foreign countries, generals talking military matters, the usual nobility, and some special envoys from across the empire. The day's audience completed, he leaves for the temple. As pharaoh, he must pay tribute to the chief god, Amun-Re. It's a pain, but if he doesn't do it, the empire could lose its divine odor, or Maat. It could descend into Isfet, chaos, and he would be held responsible. It's not worth the risk. Accompanied by the high priest, the pharaoh walks through the great temple to the sanctuary, enjoying the cool air and smelling the thick incense. Incense is a kind of smell that they burn, so there's a nice smell hanging in the building. Inside, he approaches the statue of Amun-Re. He asks the god some questions and receives answers from the high priest. So he asked the questions to the statue of the god, and then the god answered to the priest, and the priest gave the answers to the pharaoh. The questions over, when the questions are over, he is presented with a large bull. After prayers, the sacred butcher cuts the bull's throat as a sacrifice to the gods. Quite intense, isn't it? Every day. So in the afternoon, there's nothing like a slaughter to work up a big appetite. So the pharaoh returns to his palace for some lunch. Afterwards, he jumps into his royal chariot for a tour of the city. This is long before photos. There were no photos, so few people knew what he actually looked like. So crowds of Egyptians gathered in the streets to catch sight of their divine ruler. They all wanted to see what he looked like, of course. Surrounded by bodyguards, he visits some construction sites where magnificent new buildings are being constructed in his honor. Back at the palace, he gets a welcome break. After a day surrounded by people, he can finally be alone and wander through his beautiful gardens. So in the evening, his final daily duty comes late in the afternoon. He returns to the temple for a ceremony that marks the setting of the sun and the end of the day. After that, he goes back home for an early night. After all, even divine majesties need their beauty sleep, as all of us do, of course. So, let's go back to the lesson. So that was a nice story, right? I know I read a bit fast, so if you want to reread it, here's the slide. You can pause the video and just read it through if you want to. Otherwise, just continue. Okay, so as you can see, it's divided into morning, an afternoon, and an evening. So we're going to try to get this information out of the text. So if we look at morning, afternoon, and evening, how would you fill the schedule in? Divide into 3 parts. You can pause the video now and think about how you would fill in morning, afternoon, and evening. I have 3 points for the morning, 3 for the afternoon, and 2 for the evening. So think about it, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what I would have done. In the morning, he gets cleaned and dressed. He has a daily meeting in the audience chamber, and he has a visit to the temple and sacrifice of a bull. Then in the afternoon, he has a lunch, he does a city tour, and he visits the construction sites. And in the evening, he has a sunset ceremony in the temple, and then back to bed on time. So how do you find these in a text? Because there's quite a lot of information. So it's already divided in 3 pieces, so it makes it a lot easier. But then you just have to read it, and if you're reading it, you can actually highlight the most important parts, or you can write them down or whatever, so you can remember the most important ones, and they basically make a summary of what happened. And then you can fill in these 3 parts. So, I already said that I was going to talk about what a pharaoh actually is. Is it an emperor? Is it a king? Is it a queen? What is it? A pharaoh is a king of the land of Egypt and also from religion. So this means that the pharaoh is actually considered a god or a part of a god or a representative of a god, and is very important. But they are not worshipped, they are obeyed. They are always listened to. These are 2 of the pharaohs. This, for example, Cleopatra. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt. There have been 170 different pharaohs, but all at different times. It can last from 4 months to 94 years. That pharaoh actually became pharaoh when he was only 6 years old. And he stayed until he was 100 years old. It's a long time to be pharaoh. And there was a long time span. For example, the Big Pyramid of Giza, was constructed 2,800 years before the year 0. But Cleopatra had business meetings with Julius Caesar from the Roman Empire. So this very long time apart. So a pharaoh is a very important person. They are always looked up to, and they are obeyed by the whole country. And they are divided, when you look at 170 different pharaohs, it's divided into 31 dynasties. A dynasty means that one family is in power. That can mean that a father hands the throne to his son or to a cousin, as long as it stays within one family. When it goes to another family, it's another dynasty. So there have been 31 different families who ruled over Egypt. So the extra task for today is that in the link in the description down below, you will find a document with a text explaining some kind of different pharaohs. And your task is to write down all the names from the pharaohs that are mentioned in the text. But remember, not all of the names have to be pharaohs. You really have to be careful about the information that you use. So when you read it, make notes, highlight, or write down the most important parts. Any name you found, and then write why and how you found it. And if you have your list of names, you can send it to the email that's also mentioned in the description down below, and we will actually check and give you feedback on it. So, I hope you have fun with it, and I will see you next video. Bye bye!